The second-floor window of the Calabrese mansion frames the night like a painting of betrayal. Rain hammers the glass in sheets, each drop catching the amber glow of the service entrance below, and Aleandro stands motionless, watching. 3 weeks and 2 days. 19 times. The woman in the black and white uniform, the one whose name he has never asked, slips through that door at precisely 3:22 in the morning with a canvas bag clutched against her chest. She disappears into the rain-soaked darkness, and Aleandro's jaw tightens like a fist closing around something fragile that he will crush. His lieutenant Marco stands 6 feet behind him, hand resting near his chest where the weight of his weapon lives. The silence between them is absolute. In this world, the world built on blood and the bones of broken promises, silence means everything. Silence means calculation. Silence means someone is about to die. "Follow her," Aleandro says. His voice cuts through the rain sound like a blade wrapped in ice. "Find out where she goes. Find out who she meets." And Marco, he turns, and his eyes are the color of storm clouds before lightning. "Do not let her know she is being followed." Marco nods once and withdraws, his footsteps descending the marble staircase with the measured precision of a man who has learned that hesitation gets people killed. Aleandro turns back to the window. He watches Mia's small figure disappear around the corner of Beacon Hill, swallowed by the rain and darkness. In his 39 years, he has survived 3 assassination attempts, a bombing that took out half of his warehouse on the waterfront, and the betrayal of his own brother, Vittorio, who sold the Calabrese family to the Marino syndicate 5 years ago for money and a promise of safety that never came. Vittorio died screaming in a basement beneath the North End, but not before Aleandro understood the most important lesson of his life: trust is a luxury only the living can afford. Everyone else pays with blood. So when a woman who scrubs his marble floors starts sneaking out in the dead of night, carrying things, meeting shadows, when she operates in secret within his own home, under his own roof, there is only one word for what she is: a traitor. And traitors do not live long in Boston. But what Aleandro does not know, what his security system did not capture, what his own eyes never witnessed, is the truth that lives in the space between his suspicion and reality. For weeks earlier, on a night when a summer storm split the sky like a knife through silk, his 7-year-old daughter Emma was in a car with her mother's sister, driving home from a piano lesson on Beacon Hill. The other vehicle came out of nowhere, a delivery truck whose driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, and the impact was the sound of 1,000 breaking bones compressed into a single moment of violence. The car crumpled like paper. Emma hung suspended in her car seat, blood running down her small face from a cut on her forehead, her breath coming in the shallow gasps of a child in shock. The driver beside her, her aunt, was unconscious, bleeding from a gash on her temple. And in those seconds that stretched like hours, when no one knew a child was dying in that wreckage, a woman in a black and white uniform was walking home from her second job. Mia Voss heard the crash before she saw it. The sound pulled her from her thoughts like a hook through her chest. She ran toward the smoking vehicles, toward the screaming metal and shattered glass, and she did not hesitate. She did not think about whether she should get involved. She did not consider the risk to herself. She simply moved like a person who knows what it is to be drowning and reaches for anyone going under. She pulled Emma from the car with hands that trembled but did not break. She cradled the bleeding child against her chest, whispering words that her own mother whispered to her 30 years ago, in a time before everything became sharp and dangerous and painful. "You are safe. You are safe. You are safe." She stayed with Emma until the ambulance came, never learning the child's name, never asking for reward or recognition, simply a woman made of nothing but survival and the instinct to save what could still be saved. When the paramedics arrived, she faded back into the rain and darkness, just another figure in the Boston night, returning to her walk home, her heart thundering in her chest. She never knew that the child in her arms was Emma Calabrese. She never knew that the man watching from the window of his mansion, waiting for his daughter to come home, would see her arrive safe and breathing, her small body wrapped in a paramedic's blanket, and would thank a God he no longer believed in. And Aleandro, standing at that window now, rain streaming down the glass between him and the night, has no idea that the woman he is having followed, the woman he believes is a traitor bleeding secrets into the darkness, is the reason his daughter is still alive. The irony is a knife edge. It cuts both ways. Downstairs in the grand foyer of the mansion, Theo, the other lieutenant, the one with the scar running from his eye to his jawbone, is reviewing the security feeds from tonight. Black and white surveillance, time-stamped and precise. He watches Mia slip out at 3:22 a.m. exactly, the canvas bag swinging against her leg. He pauses the footage, studying her face for any sign of deception, and what he sees instead is a woman so thin that the bones of her shoulders push against her uniform like a prisoner trying to escape her own skin. He has worked for Aleandro for 12 years. In that time, he has learned to read men the way other people read weather. He has learned the difference between fear and guilt, between necessity and choice. And something in the way Mia moves, careful, deliberate, like a person who has learned that being noticed can be dangerous, tells him that whatever she is doing in the rain at 3:22 in the morning, it is not betrayal. But it is not his place to speak. In this world, speaking without permission is a kind of death. He closes the laptop and waits for Marco to report back. Across the city, in a basement 3 blocks from the harbor, Douglas Hale stands in front of a bathroom mirror at 3:41 in the morning, counting cash. He is a man of 53 years, with the kind of face that has been carved by cruelty into something almost inhuman. His mouth is a thin line. His eyes are the color of dirty ice. He works the night shift as a manager at the Riverside Hotel, one of the few establishments in Boston that does not answer to Calabrese, and in that job he has discovered a talent for extraction, taking things from people who have nothing, prying their pockets open, stealing their dignity along with their wages. Mia Voss is his favorite target. She has worked at the Riverside for 3 years, cleaning rooms in the early mornings before the guests wake, and in those 3 years, Douglas has perfected the art of making her disappear. Her tips vanish into his pocket. Her raises never materialize. He has written up false complaints about her work performance that now sit in a file somewhere, documents of failure and negligence that exist only in his imagination. And most importantly, he holds her eviction notice like a sword over her head. 12 days. Red ink. $85,000 or she loses everything. He counts the cash again, $432 that he stole from Mia's tips over the past month, and he smiles. The smile does not reach his eyes. Nothing ever reaches Douglas Hale's eyes because nothing living has existed behind them for a very long time. Outside his apartment, rain batters the windows like it is trying to break through. The storm intensifies. The night deepens. And in the rain-soaked darkness of Boston, 2 separate men are following the same woman, watching her with eyes that mean completely different things. Marco, tracking her for Aleandro, is a hunter searching for proof of betrayal. Douglas, waiting for her in the rain, is a predator preparing to feed. And Mia Voss, carrying a canvas bag filled with food donated from a food bank 14 blocks away, is walking toward a life that is about to shatter in ways she cannot yet imagine. She has no idea that in approximately 48 hours, she will be standing in a diner at 3:44 in the morning with the most dangerous man in Boston, a man whose hands have ordered deaths and whose word is law, and she will be telling him the truth about where she goes in the darkness. She has no idea that her life, her small invisible life, is about to become the center of a war that will shake the entire city. Right now, she is simply a woman walking through rain, her shoulders bent against the wind, carrying $34 in her pocket and the weight of 1,000 desperate choices. The storm will pass. But before it does, everything will change. The rain hammers against the window of the Cromwell Hotel like it is trying to break through glass, and Mia Voss stands in the service hallway with her shoulders drawn tight, her fingers trembling as she adjusts the cuff of her black and white server uniform. It is 6 o'clock in the evening on a Tuesday in July, and somewhere in the ballroom behind her, 300 wealthy guests are lifting champagne flutes to celebrate a merger that will make them richer. She is not celebrating. She is counting. $217 in tips collected throughout the dinner service. $17 from a woman in a white silk dress who called her sweetheart. $50 from a man whose Rolex cost more than Mia's monthly rent. the rest scattered in ones and fives, as if the wealthy believe tipping well is a burden they must bear with the weight of a stone. The footsteps arrive before the voice does. They are measured, unhurried, deliberate. Douglas Hale rounds the corner, and the hallway seems to shrink around him. He is 42 years old with slicked-back dark hair and eyes the color of wet concrete. His manager's suit fits perfectly, tailored to hide the softness developing around his middle, and when he smiles at her, it is a smile without warmth, without mercy, without anything resembling human feeling. "You're short," he says. The words drop like a stone into still water. "Short." Mia's voice comes out barely a whisper, shattered like glass before it hits the floor. "Mr. Hale, I collected every tip. I promise. I watched every table." 200, he says. His hand reaches out, not violently, not yet. His fingers close around her wrist with the slow certainty of a trap snapping shut. "I know you've been holding out. You think I don't keep count? You think I don't watch every cent that should belong to me?" The pressure increases. His thumbnail digs into the inside of her wrist, and Mia feels the sharp sting of it, a knife cutting through her skin. She does not pull away. She never pulls away. 8 years have taught her that resistance only deepens the wound. "I gave you everything, Mr. Hale," she says. Her eyes remain fixed on his chest, on the tie clip shaped like a snake. "I swear on my life. I swear." He releases her with a shove that sends her backward 3 steps. Her shoulders hit the cold tile wall. A shock of pain travels down her spine and settles there, adding itself to the catalogue of aches that have become the landscape of her body. "You're working a double tomorrow," he says. 10 a.m. to midnight. Both rooms, both bars, both ballrooms. You refuse and I'll make sure you never work in this city again. You'll be blacklisted, Voss. No hotel will touch you. No restaurant. No club. Do you understand what that means? It means you'll be nothing. Less than nothing. It means you'll end up exactly where you belong." He walks away. His footsteps fade down the hallway like the sound of a judge's gavel still echoing in a courtroom. Mia stands there in the half-light of the service corridor, her wrist throbbing with the shape of his hand still printed on her skin, and she does not move for 3 minutes. Her breathing slowly steadies. Her heart rate returns to something resembling normal. The pain becomes just another weight she will carry forward. By 10 o'clock that same evening, she is on her knees on the marble floors of Aleandro Calabrese's mansion on Beacon Hill. The floors are black and white in a checkerboard pattern, each square perfectly aligned, and Mia moves methodically across them with a soft bristled brush and water that smells faintly of lemon. The black and white uniform she wears seems designed to make her invisible against them, as if she is meant to be a phantom haunting the spaces between the wealthy and their comfort. The housekeeper, a woman named Patricia with grey-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun, walks past without looking at her. A cook moves through the kitchen doorway, then another staff member. None of them acknowledge her. She exists in the space they occupy but not in any real sense. She is a vessel for labor, a cleaning tool that happens to breathe. Her back aches beneath the fabric of her uniform, a deep muscular pain that radiates from her lower spine to her shoulders. The scars there, 8 years of them, laid on top of each other like the rings inside a tree, do not hurt so much as pulse with a dull reminder that pain has been her constant companion so long that she barely remembers what a day without it feels like. The uniform covers them completely. No one has ever seen them. No one has ever asked. She scrubs. The brush moves in circles. The water becomes slightly grey, then slightly brown. She empties the bucket, refills it, begins again. 2 hours later, she is walking home through the summer rain that has suddenly turned violent, the sky cracked open like a skull, lightning splitting the darkness into pieces. The storm sweeps in from the harbor and floods the streets of Boston with a kind of primal fury, and Mia walks with her head down, her thin jacket soaked through, her shoes making wet sounds against the pavement. She is 3 blocks from her apartment when the sound comes. A screech of tires. Not the normal sound of a car braking, but the shrieking of rubber on wet asphalt pushed beyond its limit. Then the crunch. Metal against stone. A collision so violent that windows in nearby buildings rattle in their frames. Mia runs toward the sound without thinking, without calculating whether it is safe or wise. There is a black SUV crumpled against the corner of an old brownstone building, and even in the darkness and rain, she can see that someone is inside it. She yanks the passenger door open. The hinges grind. The door swings free. Inside, a child sits trembling in a booster seat. She is 7 years old with dark curls plastered to her forehead, and blood is running down her face from a gash near her hairline. Her eyes are wide, her mouth open in a silent scream, and when she sees Mia, she reaches out her small hands. "It's okay, sweetheart," Mia says. Her voice transforms into something gentle, something that does not belong to the woman who counts tips and flinches at managers' hands. "It's okay. I've got you." She unfastens the seat belt with shaking fingers, lifts the child, her name is Emma, Mia will never know this, and carries her out into the rain. She sits on the rain-soaked sidewalk and cradles the girl against her chest, whispering words that come from nowhere, from the deepest place in her, from the part of her that still remembers how to be human. "You're safe," she says. "I've got you. You're going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay." Emma cries against her shoulder. The rain falls. The night deepens. When the sirens arrive, 3 minutes later, then 5, then 10, Mia sees the security detail that emerges from a second vehicle. Men in dark suits that cost more than everything she owns. Men whose eyes scan the scene with the precision of soldiers assessing a battlefield. She does not know who this child belongs to. She does not know that she has just saved the daughter of the most powerful man in the city. She simply slips away into the storm, becoming invisible again, just another figure moving through the rain-soaked darkness of the city. By the next morning, the accident is already old news. The child is fine. No serious injuries. The driver of the SUV is being treated for shock. And somewhere in the security footage, there is a grainy image of a woman in a hotel uniform disappearing into the storm. No one knows her name. No one thinks to look for her. But on the other side of the city, in a neighborhood where brownstone buildings rent for millions and gardens are maintained by staff who arrive in unmarked vehicles, Catherine Mercer sits across from her husband at a glass breakfast table. She is 40 years old, blonde, with diamonds hanging from her ears like tears made of light. She is scrolling through her phone when she sees the photo that will change everything. A maid. A server, maybe. Some invisible woman who caught her husband's attention at a charity luncheon 2 months ago. And according to the social media post from Patricia, the head housekeeper at Aleandro Calabrese's estate, this same invisible woman has been placed on the priority cleaning staff. A promotion. An honor. An inexplicable favor for someone so clearly beneath notice. Catherine's eyes narrow. Her perfectly manicured nails tap against the table. She does not know who this woman is, but she knows what needs to happen. The wives of men like her husband understand that the wives of men like Aleandro Calabrese are not threats. It is the maids. It is the invisible ones. And Catherine has always been very good at making invisible people disappear. That same afternoon, an eviction notice is slipped under the door of a studio apartment on the 4th floor of a building on the South End. The paper is white. The text is printed in standard font. But the amount owed is circled in red ink, and the deadline is marked with a line through 12 days, 1 day for each of the next 2 weeks. $85,000. Building code violations. Structural damage. Unpaid assessments going back years. The notice does not mention that the violations were caused by negligent landlords and faulty inspection reports. It simply states the amount. 12 days. The color red like a warning, like blood, like time running out. Mia discovers it when she returns from the hotel at 2 in the morning. She sits on the edge of her bed, a mattress on a metal frame, thin sheets, one pillow, and reads the words over and over, her mind unable to process them into anything resembling meaning. $85,000. She has $34 in her pocket. $34 to her name. The rain continues outside her window. The storm has not yet passed. The neon sign above Rose's diner flickered like a heartbeat failing, casting the checkered floor below in sickly yellow light. Inside, the air hung thick with the smell of burnt coffee and grease that no amount of cleaning could erase. Mia Voss sat alone in a corner booth at 3:44 in the morning, her fingers trembling as she counted coins across the laminated table. $4. That was what remained after buying the cheapest cup of coffee the waitress would serve her. $4 between her and complete invisibility. The eviction notice lay beside her wallet, its white surface glowing under the fluorescent tubes. 12 days had been marked in red ink when she found it slipped under her door. Now there were 8. 8 days before everything she owned would be removed from that studio apartment on the 4th floor, tossed into the street like garbage. She did not cry. Crying required an energy she no longer possessed. The bell above the diner door chimed, sharp and sudden in the hollow silence. Mia's body went rigid. She recognized him immediately, not because she had ever looked directly at him, but because the air around Aleandro Calabrese changed the moment he entered a space. It became heavier. Dangerous. His black coat, despite the oppressive summer heat, hung from shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of an entire empire. Marco and Theo flanked him like sentries, their hands resting near weapons that everyone pretended did not exist. He slid into the booth across from her without invitation, without permission, the way a man slides into spaces he owns. "You have been sneaking out of my house for 3 weeks, Aleandro said. His voice was low, solid like an oath carved into stone. "In my world, this means one of 2 things. You are stealing from me, or you are selling information about me to people who would pay for it. Which is it?" Mia's breath caught. She opened her mouth but only silence emerged, the kind of silence that felt like drowning while still above water. "Neither," she finally whispered. "I swear to you, Mr. Calabrese, I would never." "Then where do you go?" He leaned forward slightly, and she could see the scar that ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, a thin white line like a blade had once tried to cleave him in 2. Perhaps one had. 3 in the morning. 2:48. 3:15. Every night at a different hour. My security team has been tracking you. So I am asking you directly. Where? Marco and Theo did not move, but their presence seemed to expand, filling the diner, pressing against the walls. The truck driver in the corner pretended to read his newspaper, but his hands had gone white-knuckled around the edges. Mia pulled her pocket inside out. $4 in crumpled bills, a handful of coins, a receipt from the laundromat. $34 total, and that was only because she had not yet paid for tomorrow's coffee. "This is all I have," she said, her voice barely a whisper above the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. "Everything. This is all I am worth right now." "You are working," Aleandro said. It was not a question. 3 jobs. The word spilled from her like water from a broken vessel. The hotel from 6 in the evening until 10. Your mansion from 11 at night until 3 in the morning. Then the laundromat on Tremont Street until 7 when the owner arrives. I am not stealing from you. I am not betraying anyone. I am just trying to keep myself alive. He stared at her pocket's contents as if looking at something foreign, something his mind could not quite process. His lieutenants exchanged a glance, the kind of glance that passed between men who had served the same master for 15 years and had never, in all that time, heard him ask a question about someone's survival. "Why?" Aleandro asked. Mia's hands shook as she slid the eviction notice across the table. The red ink seemed to pulse in the diner light. "Douglas Hale steals my tips. All of them. He has done it for 8 years. He tells me if I report him, if I tell anyone, he will destroy my reputation. He will call hotels across the city and tell them I am a thief, that I am unstable, that I cannot be trusted. He has done it to others. I have watched him do it. And my landlord is demanding $85,000. The numbers hung in the air between them like a curse. $85,000. To Aleandro, that was probably the cost of the watch on his wrist, the weight of which alone could buy her freedom. To Mia, it was the impossible, the insurmountable, the death of everything. The building code violations were not my fault, she continued, tears finally breaking through the dam. The roof leaks. The pipes are corroded. But he says I owe it anyway. I have 8 days before they evict me. I have been going to the food bank. The bags I carry when I leave your house, that is not stolen goods. That is charity. That is the only way I eat and still save money toward rent I will never be able to pay. Outside, thunder began its approach. The summer storm that had been building all day was finally arriving. Aleandro was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. It was no longer a weapon. It was something else entirely. For weeks ago, someone pulled my daughter from a car accident on Beacon Hill. A woman wearing a hotel uniform. Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat of my car while my driver was distracted. The car went off the road. A woman held my daughter in her arms until the ambulance came. She did not ask for money. She did not ask for her name to be known. She simply held a child who was not hers and kept her alive. Mia's face went white. Her hand flew to her mouth. The little girl with the dark curls, she whispered. I did not know she was yours. I just saw a child who needed help. Yes, Aleandro said quietly. You did. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, something dangerous and tender warred across his features. My lieutenant has been looking for you for a month. We wanted to thank you. To reward you. Instead, I find you counting coins at 3 in the morning, trying to decide if you can afford to eat tomorrow. Marco and Theo exchanged another look. This one carried shock. Tell me about Douglas Hale, Aleandro said, his voice hardening again. Mia's hands clenched into fists. He is a manager at the Cromwell Hotel. He has the power to hire and fire. He uses it. He steals from the staff systematically. Tips, wages, whatever he can take. And nobody reports him because he knows things about people. Secrets. Vulnerabilities. He uses them as leverage. And Catherine Mercer. The name seemed to taste like poison on his tongue. You know about her. Mia felt something crack inside her chest. She came to the hotel for lunch 2 months ago. She saw me. Or rather, she decided I was worth destroying. She spilled wine on her dress and claimed it was my fault. She told her friends I was inappropriate, that I threw myself at wealthy men. She was lying, but it did not matter. Douglas believed her because Catherine Mercer's husband is connected to people Hale fears. He suspended me without pay. 2 weeks. 2 weeks means eviction. Aleandro stood. Marco and Theo straightened, responding to his movement like 2 parts of a single organism. You saved my daughter when you had nothing to gain, Aleandro said, and his voice was like thunder moving across a distant horizon. You worked 3 jobs rather than steal or betray. You are not nobody, Mia Voss. You were never nobody. These people simply needed you to believe it. Why would you help me? She asked, the question barely audible. I am just a maid. I clean your floors. You do not even see me. I see you now, he said. Lightning split the sky. The diner windows turned white for an instant. Then the rain came, hammering against the glass like something trying to break through. What are you going to do? Mia whispered. Aleandro looked down at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her understand why men feared him. Not because of the scar or the power or the men who followed him, but because he was capable of seeing injustice and could not let it stand. Now, he said, his voice low and absolute, they learn what happens when they touch what is mine. He placed a black card on the table beside her eviction notice. This is my attorney's number. Call it tomorrow. Tell her everything. Every theft, every threat, every lie Catherine Mercer has spread. Everything. Mia stared at the card. And the $85,000? Marco asked quietly. Is no longer her problem, Aleandro replied. The rain hammered against the Cromwell Hotel's service entrance like 1,000 angry fists. 9 o'clock in the morning, and the sky hung grey and bruised above Boston's oldest neighborhoods. Mia Voss pushed through the rusted door, her thin coat already soaked through at the shoulders, her breath coming in small, measured gasps. She had come for one thing only, her final paycheck. $512. It was not much, but it was hers, earned across nights of scrubbing marble floors until her knees bled through her stockings. The service alley smelled like wet garbage and broken dreams. Douglas Hale was waiting. He stepped out from behind a delivery truck, his manager's jacket buttoned tight over a chest that had grown soft with cruelty and excess. His face was the color of spoiled meat, his eyes small and dark like a reptile's. When he smiled, his teeth looked like weapons. Well, Douglas said, his voice dripping with the kind of venom that only comes from knowing you have power over someone with nothing. If it isn't the charity case. Come to grovel. Mia tried to walk past him. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His fingers were ice. His grip was a vice. I'm here for my paycheck, Douglas. That's all. Your paycheck? He laughed, a sound like gravel in a dryer. You think you're walking out of here with anything? You embarrassed this hotel. You spread lies. You got yourself suspended and now you want to waltz back in here like nothing happened. He yanked her deeper into the alley, away from the street. Away from witnesses. I'm keeping that check. Consider it damages. Mia pulled, but his grip only tightened. Her wrist screamed. She could feel her pulse hammering beneath his thumb like a small bird trapped in a cage. You can't do that. That's illegal. You have to pay me for the hours I worked. Douglas leaned close. His breath smelled like cigarettes and expired ambition. Illegal? Go ahead and report me. Call the labor board. Call the cops. I'll make sure every hotel, every restaurant, every cleaning service in Boston knows you're a thief and a liar. You think you're going to work anywhere in this city again? He released her wrist but only to pull the eviction notice from his jacket pocket. It was wrinkled now, worn soft from being handled, but the red ink marking the deadline was still vivid. Still terrifying. 8 days, Voss. 8 days until you're out on the street. Where are you going to go? Who's going to take you in? Mia felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart exactly. Something deeper. Something that had been holding her together through every shift, every threat, every night she had gone to bed hungry so Emma could eat. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because I can, Douglas said simply. He tucked the notice back in his pocket like a man collecting a winning lottery ticket. Because you're nobody. And nobodies don't matter. He walked away, his footsteps echoing off the wet concrete, the sound of his leather shoes fading into the roar of traffic on the street beyond. Mia stood alone in the alley, her wrist throbbing, and felt the weight of the world settle onto her shoulders like a stone coffin being sealed. Across the city, at a gleaming country club nestled in the emerald hills of Brookline, Catherine Mercer sat at a table surrounded by women in designer dresses and pearls that cost more than Mia's entire year of rent. The luncheon was supposedly to raise funds for the children's hospital, but Catherine had never given a cent to charity in her life. What she gave to charity was stories. Poison dressed up as concern. That made from the Cromwell. Catherine said, her voice pitched low but carrying, as all poison does. I heard she was caught stealing from guests. Jewelry. Cash. Can you imagine the audacity? And apparently she's been blackmailing wealthy clients. Threatening to expose them unless they pay her. Catherine lifted her crystal water glass, her eye scanning the table to watch the lies take root. Absolutely shameful. And the poor hotel has had to deal with the scandal. I almost feel sorry for Douglas Hale. He's the victim in all this. The other women nodded. They always nodded. They were creatures of consensus, of collective judgment, and Catherine was their high priestess. What she said became truth by the simple act of her saying it. The poison would spread through Boston social circles like ink through water. By evening, it would reach the boards of charities where Mia might have found work. By tomorrow, it would poison every job application she submitted. Catherine smiled. The damage was perfect. At 11 o'clock that night, Mia stood at the edge of Boston Harbor. The rain had returned, the same cold drizzle that had fallen the night she saved Emma. The water stretched out before her like an open grave, dark and deep and final. Her hands trembled not from the cold but from something far worse, the knowledge that she was out of options. Out of time. Out of hope. She had $34 in her pocket. $34 to her name, in a city where a single night in a shelter cost $25. She had no job. No apartment in 6 days. A reputation destroyed by lies that spread faster than truth ever could. Douglas had taken her paycheck. Catherine had taken her future. The only thing left was the present moment, and the present moment felt like standing on the edge of a knife. The black water below looked almost peaceful. She thought about Emma's face on that rain-soaked night, the blood mixing with the child's tears, the way the little girl had clutched to her like Mia was the only solid thing in a falling world. She thought about Aleandro's words in the diner, "You are not nobody, Mia Voss. You were never nobody." But the doubt was a creature with teeth. It gnawed at her from the inside. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe she was nobody. Maybe it would be easier to just let go, to stop fighting, to let the water carry her down into the dark where nothing could hurt anymore. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the wet concrete, the eviction notice still clutched in her shaking hands, the red ink bleeding in the rain. She sobbed, her whole body shaking, her voice breaking into pieces. Then her phone buzzed. A single text from an unknown number, Rose's Diner. Now. AC? It was 11:34 p.m. That text, those 6 characters, pulled her back from the edge like a rope thrown to a drowning woman. It was not much. But it was enough. At 2 o'clock in the morning, 12 men in black tactical gear moved through the Cromwell Hotel like shadows with purpose. They did not run. They did not shout. They simply moved, each step precise, each breath controlled, each man a part of a single organism responding to a single will. The raid warrant had been signed by a federal judge at midnight. The charges were embezzlement, wage theft, and labor trafficking. The evidence was meticulous: bank statements, employee testimony, 43 years of stolen tips adding up to $340,000. Douglas Hale was in his office on the 7th floor, counting cash into neat piles, when the door came off its hinges. The men in tactical gear moved in like water filling a cup. There was no violence, no drama. Just the simple, inexorable force of the federal government executing a warrant. Douglas saw the badges. He saw the guns. His face went white like something drained of blood. He collapsed to his knees. "Please," he whispered, his voice breaking into a sound like shattered glass. "Please, I can explain. I can pay it back. I can." Special Agent Rivera read him his rights while Douglas wept, his entire body shaking like a man in the final stages of fever. The man who had terrorized Mia for 8 years, who had stolen from 43 employees, who had built his life on the pain of people with less power than him, was dragged out in handcuffs at 2:47 in the morning, past the night staff who watched in absolute silence. At 6 in the morning, Catherine Mercer's world caught fire. Her husband Richard received an anonymous envelope containing photographs. The images were explicit, time-stamped, undeniable. Catherine with another man, a consultant who worked for his firm, in a hotel room that was not their marital bed. But the photographs were only the opening chord of a symphony of destruction. At 8 o'clock, the Boston Globe published a front-page exposé. Catherine Mercer had embezzled from 3 different charities over a period of 7 years. $200,000. Every receipt, every wire transfer, every falsified document had been compiled by financial investigators working with meticulous precision. The evidence was a masterpiece of accounting proof. Catherine was at the country club, sitting with the same women she had poisoned Mia's reputation to, when her social media began to light up with the news. By 9 o'clock, her friends had turned their backs. By 10 o'clock, federal agents arrived in black SUVs. Catherine screamed as they walked her out in handcuffs. Her designer dress was still immaculate. Her diamond necklace still caught the morning light. But her face was the face of a woman watching her entire constructed life collapse into rubble. The cameras flashed. The photographers shouted questions she could not answer. The woman who had destroyed reputations for sport, who had poisoned Mia's future with casual cruelty, felt her own future crumble like ash in her hands. Within 1 hour, 500,000 people had seen the footage online. By evening, 2 million. By the end of the week, every news outlet in the country had run the story. Douglas Hale faced 40 years in federal prison minimum. His lawyer told him in a visiting room with grey cinder block walls that he would die behind bars. A quick death would have been merciful compared to this, a lifetime of knowing he had lost everything, trapped in a cell, his name synonymous with cruelty and theft. Catherine Mercer received 15 years for charity fraud. Her husband filed for divorce that same day. He took the children. He took the house. He took every asset and left her with the ruins of her reputation. The women who had nodded at her table now testified against her in court, their loyalty dissolving the moment her power evaporated. But the final destruction was something darker still. Aleandro arranged a meeting with the Rossini family, his rivals, the people who controlled the docks and the gambling rings and a dozen other operations that lived in the shadows of Boston. Catherine Mercer was payment for a territorial dispute that had simmered between the families for 3 years. A gift offered in a language of blood and power and understanding. She was dragged away screaming from the courthouse steps at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, shoved into the back of a black van, pulled into the underworld from which there was no returning. She was never seen again. Mia watched the news coverage from a booth at Rose's Diner, Aleandro beside her. Marco and Theo stood by the door, their presence a shield and a promise. On the television, Catherine's terrified face was captured in a final frame before the van door closed and the vehicle pulled away into the Boston traffic. Is she? Mia could not finish the sentence. She betrayed the wrong people, Aleandro said quietly, his voice low and absolute like a judge pronouncing sentence. The Rossinis do not forgive. They do not forget. And they do not let go. He placed his hand over Mia's. His palm was warm. His grip was gentle. Everything about Douglas and Catherine had been cold, transactional, cruel. Everything about Aleandro's touch was a promise that the world had shifted, that the darkness had retreated, that she was no longer invisible. "You are safe now," he said. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The sky was beginning to clear. 3 days after Catherine Mercer disappeared into that black van, Mia Voss sat in Aleandro Calabrese's office on the 3rd floor of his mansion. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Boston skyline, a view of the city she had cleaned from below for so long, a view that had never belonged to her until this moment. The eviction notice lay on his mahogany desk, its red ink bleeding through the white paper like a wound that would not close. 12 days marked. $85,000. Everything she had in the world, $34 in a worn wallet, would not even cover a week of rent in a place like this. Aleandro walked across the hardwood floor, his footsteps measured and deliberate, each sound a small assertion of power. He wore a charcoal suit, the fabric so fine it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When he placed the check on the desk in front of her, it made no sound at all. Just a whisper of paper against wood. 85,000, he said. His voice was low and solid like an oath. The full amount. Mia's hands trembled. She could not pick it up. The check represented everything: escape, breath, a future that was not measured in hours until the next shift. But accepting it felt like a door closing on who she had been. The invisible woman who cleaned marble floors while the world slept. The woman who had nothing and therefore had nothing left to lose. "I can't take this," she whispered. "It's too much. You saved my daughter's life. Aleandro leaned back against his desk, the weight of his body causing it to settle with a small creak. You held her while she bled. You did not let her go. I have money beyond counting, Mia. This is nothing compared to that debt. She reached for the check with shaking hands. The paper was thin and expensive, printed with numbers that meant survival. When she looked up at Aleandro, his eyes held something she had never seen before, not pity, but recognition. Like he was seeing her truly for the first time. There is something else, he said. I need someone to manage my household staff. 12 people on the payroll. They are competent but directionless. I watch you work. You see what others miss. You notice the details. You care about the spaces you occupy. I need that here. He paused. 65,000 per year. Benefits included. Health insurance. Retirement. A place to live if you need it. Mia's breath caught. A real job. Not hustling between 3 positions, not stealing moments of sleep in her car, not rationing food so that she could pay rent. A real job with a future attached. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Why would you do this? Aleandro was quiet for a long moment. He turned to the windows, looking out at the city spread below them like a kingdom that bent to his will. When he spoke again, his voice carried something raw, something that cracked at the edges. My brother betrayed my family 5 years ago, he said. He sold us to our enemies for money and power. I had to choose between mercy and survival. I chose survival. I killed him myself. The confession hung in the air between them like smoke. Mia could hear the weight of it, the cost it had extracted from him, the line he had crossed that could never be uncrossed. After that, I thought trust was impossible, Aleandro continued. I thought everyone was a potential traitor waiting for the right price. I thought mercy was a luxury I could no longer afford. He turned to face her. But you worked 3 jobs in silence. You saved my daughter when you had nothing. You did not betray anyone, even when it would have been easier. Even when betrayal might have saved you. He stepped closer, and Mia did not move. His presence filled the room like gravity. You saved me on the worst night of my life, he said. The night I thought I had lost Emma. And I saved you on yours. We are bound by that now. By shared darkness. By understanding what it means to be the kind of person who survives. Mia understood then. They were both scarred. Both people who had learned that the world did not forgive weakness, that power was the only language that mattered. But they had also both learned something else, that sometimes the only way to survive was to choose trust anyway. To believe that not everyone would betray you. That some people would hold you even when they had no reason to. That some people would save you simply because it was right. She took the check and folded it carefully, placing it against her heart. The following evening, Emma found her in the mansion's kitchen. The girl was 7 years old, small and golden-haired, wearing a pink dress with a ribbon that matched her shoes. She moved with the careful precision of a child still learning her body, still uncertain of the world. "Are you the lady who saved me?" Emma asked. Mia knelt down to the child's eye level. "I am. Papa says you held me when I was scared. That you didn't let me go even when you were scared too." Emma threw her small arms around Mia's waist, and the child's weight was like an anchor, holding her to something solid and real. "Thank you for holding me." Mia's eyes filled with tears. She had not cried since the hospital, since the moment she learned that Emma would be okay. But now the tears came, hot and overwhelming, a release of every fear she had carried alone for so long. "You are welcome, sweetheart," she said, her voice breaking like glass. From the doorway, Aleandro watched. His men, Marco and Theo and the others who had served him for years, had never seen him smile like this. Not the cold smile of power. Not the thin smile of victory. But a real smile, genuine and unguarded, the smile of a man who had believed the world could not hold warmth and had been proven wrong. 6 months passed like a door closing on the old life and opening onto a new one. Mia no longer wore the black and white uniform of the invisible cleaning woman. She wore professional dresses in deep colors, navy, charcoal, burgundy, and her shoes no longer scuffed and worn but leather and clean. She walked through the mansion with authority, managing the household staff with a quiet competence that made everyone respect her immediately. They knew who she was. They knew what Aleandro had done for her. And they also knew that she had earned every moment of her position through her own hands. The scars on her back remained. They would always remain. But they no longer felt like a map of everything she had lost. They felt like proof of everything she had survived. On a cold December morning, Mia and Aleandro sat together in the kitchen, drinking coffee at 7 o'clock before the household staff arrived to begin their day. This had become a ritual between them, 15 minutes alone before the mansion filled with voices and movement. Emma sat between them, her legs swinging beneath a chair too tall for her frame, chattering about her new school and the friends she had made and the art project she was working on in class. "I painted colors for sad days," Emma explained, her voice bright and serious in the way of children. "When you feel sad, you can look at the colors. Yellow, orange, pink. Happy colors. They make the sad go away." Aleandro reached across the table and took Mia's hand. His palm was warm. His grip was gentle. Everything about Douglas and Catherine had been cold and transactional and cruel. Everything about Aleandro's touch was a promise that the world had shifted, that the darkness had retreated, that she was no longer invisible. "You are safe now," he said softly. "You have always been safe here." Outside, December snow had begun to fall, covering the Boston streets in white. The city looked clean and new, as if the winter had erased everything that came before. If this story moved you, I ask you to do 3 things. First, drop a like and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Second, subscribe to this channel because tomorrow we bring you another story of survival, justice, and the kind of love that only comes after darkness. Third, comment below and tell me, have you ever felt invisible? How did you find your strength again? Every comment you leave is a precious source of motivation that helps us continue creating meaningful stories. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. Remember this, the storm will pass, and you are far stronger than you think. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.